Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the DLF Trade Show and the DLF YouTube channel. I'm going to try and stay in this reclined position the entire time so no one notices. I still did not oil my chair.
What is this, 3 weeks now?
Yeah, I mean, technically longer, but it's been like 2-3 weeks since I brought it up.
You'll get there one day.
Yeah, one day. It absolutely will. Yes, one day. When that day is...
Over under January 1st.
I really hope it's under. I really, really hope it's under. That's all I can say to that right now. But we'll see. We'll see as we go. The first person we're going to talk about is Baker Mayfield. And that is because he is that exact player right now who has a starting job, is doing pretty well with it. Mm-hmm. He's most likely going to be their quarterback next year because he's doing pretty well with it. You know, the team is doing well enough that they're probably not going to be able to draft a quarterback. I just quickly pulled up that Tankathon site, and I have to go try and... Tampa Bay's 13th overall at the moment. They're 3-4. I thought they were a little better. But they're still most likely out of getting a quarterback that they're going to just plug in right away. And again, Baker's doing well enough. So chances are you're going to get him for at least one more year. And that's the trade... Well, depending on value that you're getting, that I think you want to make first and foremost. So let's talk about a 12-team superflex league where someone just traded Tyjae Spears for Baker Mayfield. Okay, so I get it with a player like Spears because you look at Spears and you're like, Derrick Henry's on the way out. He's 37. He's on a team that's going to be transitioning because Will Levis decided to throw 4 touchdowns, so who knows what that offense is going to be like. But if you're telling me I can send pretty much still a prospect running back for what is most likely a 2-year starting quarterback, I'm absolutely doing that without thinking about it. And this is even that, oh, I lost one of my quarterbacks, and maybe I don't have that great 11th player to plug in. I would easily send Spears to go get Baker Mayfield. I actually sent Kirk Cousins to get Baker Mayfield in a league and felt absolutely okay about it. Because, you know, Kirk Cousins is going to come back and he's going to play next year and he's still going to be Kirk Cousins, but I want to win. Like, is there any reservation to you whatsoever for sending Tyjae Spears to go get Baker Mayfield?
No, not particularly. I feel like we kind of bumped up Tyjae Spears' value over the past couple of weeks prior to the deadline because of the thought that if the Titans trade away Derrick Henry, Spears is the RB1. Like, he would get the majority of the carries plus the receiving work that he has gotten and has stolen away from Derrick Henry so far. And then you have the ability, you know, for down the road, like a Rachaad White. Like, you were just buying Rachaad White prior to like his breakout with Leonard Fournette. And then whenever the team moved on from Fournette, he was the guy. That's essentially what you were buying with Tyjae Spears. Didn't necessarily happen, or at least, you know, it's still possible that Derrick Henry is a free agent at the end of the year. They don't re-sign him. They just stick with Tyjae Spears. Same kind of scenario like how the Bucs did with Rachaad White. They chose not to re-sign Leonard Fournette. So there is that still possible. But almost in every situation, I'm going to be choosing the quarterback, especially a quarterback with, like you said, who has a little bit of longevity with Baker Mayfield. Even if he doesn't re-sign with Tampa at the end of the year, I think he's shown enough and done enough that he'll get a starting job somewhere else. Maybe it's another bridge quarterback job, but that's just kind of where Baker is right now. But I feel like he's good enough that I feel confident plugging him in as my QB3 or as my QB2 to do bye weeks and injuries and stuff like that. Like, he's averaging on Fantasy Pros 16.5 fantasy points per game. You're not going to find just like a random bench player on your bench, unless your bench is really, really good, that's averaging 16.5 points per game. That's where you want to actually plug in a quarterback into your superflex spot. So yeah, I would definitely, especially if you're competing, you just lost Kirk Cousins, or maybe you're losing Matthew Stafford for a few weeks and you don't really have, maybe your QB3 was Garoppolo or Tannehill, and you have Tyjae Spears on your bench. I'd be willing to make that move to go get Baker and continue competing.
The next trade is a little more interesting. It's a 24 late first and late second for Joe Mixon and Baker Mayfield. Mixon is up at 135. Baker Mayfield's only at 67 for a total of 202. A late first by itself is 211. Add in the late second at 94, and you get 305. Are you paying a first for Baker? Like, if you're a competing team, you lost Cousins, are you giving your first for Baker?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, honestly, I don't want to do this. I get it. I'm not giving a first for Mixon either, but I also understand if sending 2 seconds isn't enough. But then I find something else to bridge the gap, or I find another player. Like, I don't want to. I get it. You want that to be the 112. It's too early to panic for this kind of panic for me. Even if you're in the situation before I said, like, where maybe you were only starting Cousins, and so you need a quarterback. I think I try my darndest to do something different than this. I also just don't care enough about Joe Mixon at this point anymore. Like, he's not terrible. He's not doing as bad as it feels like. It's not last year besides that one game. It's a little better than that, but it's still nothing that's really going to help you all that much. So I don't like this at all. Like, if I'm getting these levels of players, I don't want my first involved.
Yep, I agree. This is one where I thought it was just very interesting to discuss that aspect of it, where you can try to build out a bigger trade as a contender where you can get another, win now asset onto your team by adding more to your side than just going and directly targeting that quarterback. This is probably not the way that I would go about it, but I thought it was a very good thing to talk about and discuss here. There were a bunch of trades in the trade finder when you type in Baker Mayfield that are like Baker for just 1 second, Baker for a second and a third, Baker for 2 probably late seconds. Those are all things that you can get done individually, I think, whenever you're just targeting Baker Mayfield, which is kind of what's happening here. Like, if you just kind of just say the first is for Mixon, the second is for Baker, and because as a contender, you're willing to take the value hit just to continue to compete to win a championship. So from that standpoint, I guess it kind of makes sense. I agree. If I'm paying a first, I want either more longevity or more points.
So let's move on, and we're going to talk about Josh Dobbs. And there are 2 trades, and we're just going to talk about them at the same time because it would be way too boring to talk about them separately. One is Dobbs for Tank Dell, and one is Dobbs for Jalen Warren. I love me some Tank Dell. I really do. I have a few drafts where I got my 2 tanks, and it made me so happy that if I were to change any of my team names, I would have changed them to 2 tanks, but they're all just Dynasty Outhouse. But I would still trade him for Josh Dobbs right now. It's just, again, he's on a better team than he was before, and he was doing pretty well before. Like, I loved the news, the storyline of Dobbs is going to start in week 9. 3 hours later, Dobbs is not going to start in week 9.
Well, he is just for a different team. Oh, he might start this week. I don't know.
So, yeah, even if he gets 1 week to just learn the offense, you have a starter for the rest of the season. And he's going to be playing with, even if it's just Addison, even if they somehow shelve or for some reason shelve Justin Jefferson, between Addison and KJ Osborne and TJ Hawkinson, it's a better team than he was on before. So, even though no disrespect to Hollywood or Rondale, but sorry. So I would easily pay these prices for Josh Dobbs. And if we're still in a place where multiple thirds, I would send as many thirds as if I had the entire 3rd round and someone said, Russ, give me the entire 3rd round. Okay.
I want to do that now. I'm going to accumulate every single 3rd round pick, and then I'm going to toss them off for Josh Dobbs. Did you know, fun fact, Josh Dobbs, Fantasy Pro scoring up here. Josh Dobbs is the QB 12 on the season in total fantasy points. And he had 1. Apparently, he had 1 fantasy point in week 1. Just 1. So if you go from week 2 on, he is the quarterback 10 in total points. And he has 3 20-point performances and 2 more that were over 16. Total points, he is outscoring Brock Purdy, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud, and is less than a fantasy point behind Jared Goff since week 2.
Yeah, again, pulling out week 1 in trade addict scoring, he's QB 14, 20.42 points per game. Like, that's worth a first. So if you can get him for this trash, even if it is just the rest of this season and you're competing, it's worth it. I mean, of course, if you don't win, it sucks a little bit, but that is absolutely worth the shot to win.
4 fantasy points behind Tua since week 2. Neither one has played a bye. So that's straight just that's ridiculous. That is such underrated production from Josh Dobbs. The only sad part is that you have like no longevity. Like, I don't think that there's no way that he's the starting quarterback for the Vikings next year, right? Even if he does well for the remainder of the year.
Only if Cousins isn't ready to play.
Well, they have to re-sign Cousins first of all, too.
I keep forgetting that. Unless he bridges, then, and who knows if that's even a full season. So, though I also don't know what Dobbs' contract is like. I don't know if he's signed through next year.
I doubt it. I mean, he's been on like 4 different teams since the start of the year, it feels like.
Yeah, I don't even remember. Honestly don't know.
But that is so insane. So you're definitely trading away Jalen Warren for him. And I would also trade away Tank Dell, because Tank Dell he probably drafted him in the second, maybe even the third round of your rookie drafts this year. He's probably like your wide receiver 6 or 7.
And he's producing like a solid wide receiver 3 when he plays.
He's fine.
Yeah, he's fine. And the problem with wide receivers is there's lots of that. The problem with quarterback, there is not lots of that. There's
especially top 10 production from Josh Dobbs since week 2.
All right, so let's talk about the big fish in this so far little pond. And let's talk about the fact that Kyler Murray is able to be activated.
Able.
To the best of my knowledge, it has not happened yet.
Does the fact that they traded away Josh Dobbs feel like that means that they should have Kyler back this week?
Or they realize that they can get Caleb because they have the first pick and they're ready to do that.
Or that, and then they trade away Kyler to the Vikings next year.
There's so many good places for quarterbacks to go to next year. There really is. Like
Atlanta.
Yep, that's the one.
Vegas would be fun too. If you got traded to Vegas with Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs.
Yep. So, yep. And I love the first trade you picked was a Trade Addicts trade. So 12-team superflex. Kyler was traded for a 25 first, 24 second, and Michael Mayer. To me, this is Kyler. But yes. The situation with this is, and it's very rare I can give context to a trade on this show. This team thought they could compete, don't have their first this year, and they lost a lot of players to season-long injury. So Kyler is pretty much the only big piece left to trade away. And since 24 picks are being held onto way too tightly, he's moved on to 25 already. This gave him his third pick in the 25 first. So
love it.
This was probably the best he'd get in this league. And again, it's so rare that we get context to any of the trades on this show, but I can give here. So I kind of wanted to, because it is the easily missed big picture truth that we can tell you what we think a player is worth. We can tell you if we think a trade is good or a trade is bad. But if it's all you can get in your league and you want to move that player, each league is its own market. A player's value is only what the players in your league are willing to give up for him. So if this is the best you get for Kyler in your league and you need to make that move for the betterment of your team, then good for you. That's what you got. That's what you can get. Of course, if that other person then flips Kyler for more in 2 weeks, you'll feel bad about yourself. But let's hope that doesn't happen. So, yeah, like to me, a 25 first from a middling team that will soon, at worst case, next year have Kyler as their starter, making the 25 pick most likely playoffs. It's rough. It's really not the greatest value in the world. But this also shows maybe go send an offer to the Kyler manager. It's going to be a little harder because this was before the deadline, this trade. But now that Dobbs is gone, it might be a little harder to get Kyler, but go send an offer just to see what you can do.
Justin dropped a video, I think it was earlier in this week, where he talked about now's the time to start trying to trade for Kyler Murray. I mean, Kyler's been a dynasty buy for like a year now, basically ever since he got hurt, but the buy window is very rapidly closing the closer he gets to potentially getting on the field. And especially, like you said, after Dobbs getting traded, that just seems to be a signal that is probably, if not this week, maybe next week. Because I think they still want to see what they have in Kyler. And I think maybe if they can show that he is fully healthy and is still a very good quarterback, that would increase his trade stock as well to another team. So I don't think we don't see Kyler Murray this year. I don't think they sit him the entire year. So I think you'll still have him. But we got a comment on that video asking or saying that, like, if somebody has held on to Kyler Murray this long, why would they sell now, like right before he's about to come back? And my response to that was basically they probably haven't had a decent offer for Kyler Murray in a very long time. Like, it's probably been a while since they even saw an offer that included a first. So I think that if you are coming in to try to buy Kyler, you shouldn't do so like trying to buy like for 60 cents on the dollar. Like, you should be trying to get him for 90 to 95 cents on the dollar. Come in with a very strong offer, show them that you mean business, and show them an offer that they probably haven't received in a very long time, since basically Kyler Murray was last healthy. And I think a first plus more is a very good way to do that. Come in with a 25 first, a 24 second, and Michael Mayer, who is maybe, a very high potential tight end, probably also just maybe another second round pick in there as well. So 2 seconds and a first round pick for Kyler. Maybe that doesn't get necessarily accepted right away, but I feel like that at least initiates interest in the Kyler Murray manager, who there's probably decent odds that team isn't doing very well this year. So maybe that they're more willing to, sell him and look more towards the future with some draft capital and younger pieces.
So the next trade is a little bit more interesting, but still to me, again, tells the same story. And it's Kyler Murray for Kenneth Walker. Kyler Murray is in at 539, Kenneth Walker 485. And I got to be honest, Kenneth Walker is doing much better this year than I thought he would.
Mm-hmm.
And never that I thought that Kenneth Walker was bad. It's just that offense overperformed last year. And even still, when they weren't clicking on like all cylinders, Walker wasn't doing great. Like, he needed that offense to be working really well for him to be scoring really well. Trade addict scoring, which for running backs is pretty much straight PPR, because I don't think he returns any kicks. So he's in at practically 17 points per game, though the past 2 games haven't been great. So, Walker is just doing well this year, even though Geno is not what he was last year. All of that being said, I still do this for Kyler Murray. It will hurt more if Kyler doesn't play at all this year, because, again, we still don't know. It seems now much more likely that he will, but I would easily give up. Points per game, he's the RB12. Overall, I think it was 8 or 9. I would still give that up for Kyler Murray, who will be a points per game QB 6 to 2. I think is his actual range over the past his career. I think 2019. So like 4 years. So that is such a cheap price for what a top 6 quarterback should be. And if Kyler just plays, stays healthy, and no stories about him playing Call of Duty hit the news, we'll go back up to being a top 6 or 7 quarterback without trouble.
Yeah, 100% agree. Like, Kenneth Walker on a points per game basis this year is averaging 16.1 fantasy points from this Fantasy Pros report.
Man, how do I have
PPR leagues?
9? Like, I don't think my scoring is like, I don't like Fantasy Pros. I think they just don't like me.
I don't know. But at least from this, that makes him a back end QB or back end RB1 in fantasy in points per game. And the funny part about this is to tell you how influenced that points per game is by a couple big weeks. Jahmyr Gibbs is also averaging the same points per game. And Jahmyr Gibbs was doing nothing prior to the past 2 weeks without David Montgomery, to tell you what 16 points per game actually is average wise. But so even though Kenneth Walker is still producing as an RB1 this year, I will always take the QB1 over the RB1 in Superflex leagues. And that is, I agree with you that I am assuming that Kyler Murray is going to return to, at minimum, a top 10 fantasy quarterback. Maybe not for the remainder of this season, but 2024 and on, I'm taking Kyler Murray over Kenneth Walker pretty easily. And if you're competing, I would still make this move in the hopes that Kyler Murray returns. And then I would see, like, can you just go buy like Isaiah Pacheco for I'm not going to say like for cheap, but like for
second and
cheaper.
third.
Like, right. Like go move, some picks that you would for like a Baker Mayfield and go get Kyler Murray and then use the picks that you were going to use to buy Baker to go buy Isaiah Pacheco or Aaron Jones or, any one of those kind of running backs.
Pacheco actually, again, I didn't realize there was such an asterisk on my scorings, but 14.35 points per game. But the last the last 3 games were 16, 16, and 7. So like he's not like he's doing well. So exactly, like even Rachaad White, like there's a lot of ups and downs to Rachaad White's game, but again, his last 3 games, 7, 16, 18.
If you can buy Joe Mixon for less than a first, like that, you use that second and third, you go get Joe Mixon. I would buy Joe Mixon for that.
13 points per game. Yeah.
So I think there's a bunch of running backs that you can buy relatively cheap where it makes sense to just go get Kyler Murray and then try to fill in your running back a little bit easier. Cause I feel like that, especially long-term, is going to work out so much better for your roster.
Good luck to everyone out there. And if you do need advice, just keep watching our show because we're awesome. So we'll keep helping you out.
That's it.
Yep. This has been the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ Fisher at Dynasty Outhouse, Addison Hayes at AmazeHayes_. We'll catch you next time.